Hello orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. The two orchids that you are seeing are of the same type. They are both Speciosa crassus, and we're going to talk about the one on the left because along the process, this one, the one on the left, was going through some kind of root rot problem, and I'll go into more details. But essentially, they were side by side. One did really well, the other one didn't. So I thought I would make a video to share with you what I have done to help this orchid revitalize and to help recover from some of the problems that it was having. And right here, this is, after I had already cleaned up the media. Originally, they were both potted in semi-hydroponic system, so it was in a hydrocorn media, pretty similar to the leca beads. So what I had done is I pulled everything out, I cleaned the media, I cleaned the roots. I didn't cut off all the roots. As you can see, some of the roots were without envelopment. That was just to show you, there were quite a lot of root rot, and the ones that I had left on there were the ones that I thought maybe are still viable. So the leaf that you see here was turning yellow in a matter of days, and then it dropped quickly. And then the leaf that I'm touching at the moment in the video, you can tell there were some wrinkles, so this plant was definitely not doing a good job sucking up water, and all the other leaves were also droopy. Compared to this one, again, I grew them side by side on my shelf, so they really had the same light, temperature, humidity, so it was very easy for me to spot problems since I have two and I can compare them together. So I had to do something, and this video was taken I think early February, so it was still kind of, I know it's been months, right, since February or end of January, but I just haven't had the time to make a video about it. But again, at the time, even though it was winter, and completely repotting your orchid, unless for emergency, it's not recommended because you may set back your orchid dramatically. Okay, so back to this orchid and how I prepare the roots. I essentially, squeeze the roots to see whether any of the roots were still viable. Thankfully, there were about 3-4 roots that was okay. The rest, as you can see, I could easily pull off the envelopment. So I had to, spray it with hydrogen peroxide and sprayed it with alcohol as well. And then I left it on my table, bare root, for 24 hours, so that way I have another opportunity to further examine the root. And that, I like that. I like doing that because it gives me another opportunity to trim off additional roots if they are decaying further during this 24-hour period. And that really is just because, if they were going to die anyway, I'd much rather cut them off before I put this orchid into full water culture. And because the water that I use for full water culture orchids in my collection are reverse osmosis water, and it's more expensive to produce this kind of water. So whenever possible, I try to conserve the water consumption of my orchid. And if you have rotting roots in your water, full water culture water, then it's likely that it'll become cloudy very quickly, so that also means you'll have to change the water more frequently, so you spend more time and you will also spend more water. Okay, so I think just 2 weeks had gone by. This orchid was already in full water culture. I kept the first sleeve just to show you that, it fell off, but then the second leaf, the second oldest leaf on the left there, the one that with number or marking on it, you could tell it was also yellowing from closer to the stem. So it's not normal, because when you have more than one leaf turning yellow, it's usually a sign of stress for your orchid. Here you can see this is one of my mini mark, right? It was also, yes, there was a leaf yellowing, but this leaf, it took this mini mark a month and a half to yellow that leaf completely. Whereas for the leaves here, it was only like a matter of days. And then another example is, this is one of my rescue valves. And at the time, you can probably see it from here, this angle, it was spiking. This is an old footage, but the point I'm trying to make here is I'm trying to show you that, see, the oldest leaf was also turning yellow, but it was at a such gradual, slow speed. It was not turning yellow in a matter of days and then dropped. So sometimes when you have yellow leaves, you do have to look at the speed of the yellowing. If it's not too fast, then you don't have anything to worry about, because that's just its own natural tendency to retire older leaves. And usually when it's more than one leaf turning yellow, then your orchid is going through some type of stress. Okay, so at the end of January, I put it into full water culture, and then this is taken in, I think, end of February. So in a matter of 1 month, I was able to see quite a bit of root production, and then in the middle there is also a new leaf being put out, so that's really good. And the water that you see is in darker color because I was using liquid seaweed. I use only quarter strength or so liquid seaweed to help with root production. And to be honest with you, I didn't really have high hope for this orchid to bounce back, because it was really in the middle of, well, it was at the end of winter. And one of the things I did to buy me more time for spring to come was I only allow some of the roots to be touching the water just a little bit. I mean, most people know if you're doing full water culture, the general rule of thumb is probably quarter of the roots up to 1/3 of the roots being in water, right? But when you're trying to rescue your orchid with full water culture method, and especially when the season is not right, you really should be only using a little bit of root to be touching or in the water. As you can see here, this is definitely less than a quarter of its roots in water, and that's one of the things I did to buy me more time for spring to come. And when spring comes, that means the temperature is higher, and usually orchids are in more active growth, and that's when I can slightly increase the water level. And of course, you have to observe your orchid's progress, because if it's already exhibiting active growth in terms of roots or leaves, then you can probably increase the water a little bit more just to help it hydrate more. But if the season isn't right, then you'd really want to be more conservative, just so you can buy more time until the right season comes. Okay, and now this is end of June, right? Time flies. It's already end of June. I put it back into semi-hydroponic system with hydrocorn beads. Oh, by the way, the difference between hydrocorn and leca beads is that leca beads are completely round, and hydrocorn are less round. As you can see, they're kind of round, but then they also have a little bit more irregular shapes to it, and that's just the brand I use. But I don't think that they make too much of a difference. But anyway, the reason I put this back into semi-hydroponics is because Well, I already have probably about 10 orchids in full water culture, and I really don't want to have too many orchids in full water culture because it actually to me is more time consuming in terms of observing the roots in water, and sometimes I do have to sometimes alternate with semi-water culture method with these full water culture method valves, and I just don't really want to spend that much time, dumping out the water, putting the water back in. And as you can see here, semi-hydroponic system worked really well because that way in my environment in summertime, yes, I do have to look at it, check their water level, whatnot for once a week, but sometimes twice a week. Every other week, so every 2 weeks. I only need to look at them every 2 weeks, and give them water every 2 weeks. So to me, it's more convenient. Okay, so back to this orchid's progress. I put this back into semi-hydro, and the time was already end of June, so it's summertime. It's growing, the middle leaf, the newest leaf was growing in a really, really fast speed. And now fast forward, it's end of August. You can tell the newest leaf is getting quite big. So that's great. This is great news. So this tells me that this orchid has bounced back from root loss. And I'm really pleased. But as you can see, for the leaves on the left, the two on the left, there were some spider mites. I had treated it, but I don't know if I have done a good job eradicating spider mites. So I am gonna have to keep an eye on the latest leaf to see if there is any more spider mite pitting. And if there is, I'm gonna have to do another round of treatment. But as you can see here, the root stopped growing and then started growing this white new tip. It's kind of white because I do use outer cup, so that new root section is not in direct contact with the sun. That's why it's in white, but it's growing, and I occasionally do spray down that root and the media around it just so that it would have more humidity. Hopefully that'll help this root grow into the media a little bit more. And the best case scenario is that the root grows directly into the reservoir, because that way this orchid will always have some moisture, and I don't have to worry too much about it. And when there are roots in the reservoir, at least for these 16-ounce cups, I really can go without watering for 2 weeks, and that works pretty well for me with this setup in my environment. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with the way that this orchid has bounced back. And what I'm showing you here really is just another picture to show you that the latest leaf is now much bigger than the 2 previous leaves. And like I said earlier, due to previous spider mite issue, I do have to keep a close eye on this new leaf just to see if there is further sign of spider mite damage. If there is, I'm gonna have to give it treatment sooner than later because I do not want it to become a more serious issue than it needs to be. So far, I've been pretty lucky with spider mite issue. I have very little spider mite, but knock on wood. Hopefully, this will continue to be the case. But if I do have spider mite, I'll have to use some neem oil and then probably a little bit of systemic pesticides just to help with the situation. Anyway, overall, I think there are 2 main reasons that this orchid bounced back nicely. One is I use liquid seaweed, but number 2 is I utilize the full water culture method with just a little bit of root touching the water to buy me time during the winter time, and when spring comes, I increase the water level. So overall, I think these factors help this orchid bounce back a little faster. And yes, this is some of the material, some of the photos and videos were from a couple months ago, but I think that I needed to wait instead of giving you a piece of the video and then giving you an update later. So I waited for this long to give you a meaningful update. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you have any more questions, I hope you will let me know in the comment down below, and I will get back to you when I can. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!